Welcome to the Wozo Show. I am Allie, and I am joined forever by my co-host Sarah. How are you doing?
Hello. I feel like you're soon gonna leave me for a professional job in announcing because you're so good at like the PA stuff. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We are back. It is 2022. All the big things are happening this year, so it is going to be a jam-packed year. I can feel it.
And we're officially halfway through the WSL season, right?
Yeah, where did that go?
I know, for real. Where did that go? And just in case you're all wondering, we both had great holidays.
Yeah, how American. We had great holidays.
There was somebody on Twitter today, actually. I posted something. I'm revealing who posted it now, but that's okay. I posted something about this episode dropping on Wednesday, and I included the word banter. And somebody replied and was like, did Sarah post this? Because I don't think Americans use the word banter.
We've anglicized her, people. We have anglicized her. Soon she will be saying football instead of soccer, and the world will be right again.
And I actually say banta because I watch Love Island and I say it with an accent because that's how they say it.
That's shameful.
Does he have good banta? Does he have a good chat? I don't know.
That is shameful. Shameful.
Should we get into it before we lose our audience talking about Love Island?
You've lost me, never mind our audience. But we absolutely should get into it because there is only one. There is only one game we could talk about from this weekend, apart from the fact there was only 3 to choose from. But there is only one that we could talk about, and that is Birmingham City's 2-0 win over Arsenal. No one could have predicted this at all. Truly. I think Birmingham fans were in shock. Arsenal fans were in shock. The rest of the WSL were in shock that after 13 attempts, Birmingham have finally beat Arsenal.
Like, I'm so excited. I have too many things to say. I have so many things to say that I'm at a loss of words. I equate this to how excited I was during the Olympics when the US won, before we lost, obviously. And I thought we had our groove back, and I was like, things are flowing. Except now it's, as an Arsenal fan, this was hard to watch.
No, I was going to say, let's talk about, like, the winning side first. Because credit where credit's due with Birmingham City. This was not what Helen likes to call a smash and grab by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm sorry, a smash and grab?
That's what Helen calls it, which basically means that you score an early goal and then you just defend for your life. And it wasn't that at all. It was beautiful football from Birmingham City. Everything was right. Everything just fell into place. And it's some of the best football we have seen them play all season, because they've not had a great season to start off with.
No, let's be clear, this was their first win of the season.
Yep, they've only managed to get 1 point before this. 1
point before this. They were actually sitting below Leicester City before this. This was their first win in the WSL since December 2020, and this was their first home win since October 2019. I'm coming with facts, everybody. I'm coming with facts because I loved watching this game. Birmingham City, yeah, you said it. This was the best game we've seen them play all year. This is probably the best game we've seen them play in a while. They're sitting in last. Everybody really thinks that they're in that spot for relegation. First thing I want to talk about is in the pregame, we saw Skinner, the Tottenham head coach, talk about how she played Arsenal. And what she talked about is that she high-pressed them. And what they did is they worked on fitness. It was all fitness. So they can high-press, so they can keep Arsenal controlled in certain areas, so Arsenal can be more predictable and they can have a better shot, essentially, of just picking them off and disrupting their triangles. And Darren Carter, the head coach, the interim head coach now of Birmingham City, adopted that in such a wonderful fashion. And I have so many things to say about Darren Carter, because not only did those tactics work perfectly, they were able to disrupt the triangles. Arsenal couldn't find any triangles. They were able to disrupt the lines. Arsenal was completely disjointed. Like, if I had one word for this game, it would be disjointed. They were all over the place. But beyond that, Darren Carter has said that he's started kind of at the base and like working with the players on their confidence level. And you could see that come through in this game.
Yeah, first off, I now feel like I'm in a maths lesson with all of the shapes.
We only used one shape.
But secondly, you're right, like, it felt like it was more than new manager bounce, because so many clubs, when they get a new manager, they have that first, like, spurt. You actually felt like, you said, gone back to basics, worked on everything that they were sort of just off. They were always just off, you know. And to add more facts to you, this is the first time they've beaten a London team since 2018 when they beat West Ham. So this is a huge, huge thing for Birmingham. And I have to highlight Louise Quinn. Louise Quinn has been their best player for a while now, and to see her go up and beyond, like, this was a grudge match for her because this is her old club. She played for Arsenal a couple of seasons ago, got let go, went to Fiorentina, has come back to the UK with Birmingham.
She won the FA Cup with Arsenal.
Yeah, she has won so much with Arsenal. This is coming back now as a grudge match for her. And she basically said to the team, like, they've got Miedema, they've got McCabe, they've got Paris, they've got players that can score. I am your defensive captain. Listen to me and we will hold them up. And that's exactly what they did.
I could not agree more. She played a fantastic game, and I know she does get credit for what she does at Birmingham City, but Birmingham City is not in the spotlight ever. So while they are in the spotlight, it's good. It's needed for us to highlight how underrated she really is, because she is integral to this team as a leader on the field, mentally, everything. I also want to shout out Pennock and Smith. They were both playing on the right wing, and they were tenacious. They did not stop moving that entire game. They just kept working. You could tell that their work rate and just the continuation to go at the ball was just so frustrating for Katie McCabe. She was visibly frustrated. We'll get into that when we talk about Arsenal, but she was visibly frustrated dealing with both of them towards the end of the game. And that's exactly what Birmingham City needed to do. And I know Surrey was woman of the match. She had a great second goal, but Pennock and Smith were standout players for me for Birmingham City this game.
Well, that's it, because Arsenal, we've said it before on this podcast time and time again, they run the wing. That is what Arsenal do. That is how they get their goals. They've got those wingers in Mead and McCabe and all those players that can play on the wing to ping those crosses into their forwards. That's how they've got so many goals. That's how they've won so many matches. So to see two very young players, like, these two players haven't had much experience in WSL. This is one of their first seasons, if not their second. And to go head to head with a international like McCabe and show her basically who's boss and was like, you're not getting down my wing, was phenomenal to see. Like, as you said, you haven't seen that frustration in Arsenal for so long. I think the last game, Tottenham sort of got them a little riled up, but this game absolutely was their undoing, and it was all credit to Birmingham.
All credit to Birmingham City, and I think that's a perfect segue because there's a lot to talk about with Arsenal, but a lot of people are going to say they were missing a lot of players. 4 players are at Heath injured, Williamson injured, we had Catley and Ford gone, but also, let's look at Birmingham City's bench. They had 3 16-year-olds and a 17-year-old on the bench, and that was their bench. So that argument, I'm just already going to say, is out the window. Birmingham City frustrated Arsenal. You just said it. They frustrated Arsenal's wings. And my biggest disappointment with Arsenal this game is exactly that. They reacted terribly to the kind of pressure that Birmingham City put on them. And I'm not even talking tactically yet, just mentally. Katie McCabe was out there. She should have received a yellow card with the type of foul she was throwing out. Vivian Miedema got a yellow card for talking to the referee. She was so in her head about the game. And that's when you know it's gone down the tubes, is when a player doesn't even keep playing. They just take it up with a referee. That's when you know their mentality is totally gone. So for me, the biggest disappointment overall for Arsenal was how they dealt with it mentally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And people are saying, oh, well, they've had players missing. But I'm looking at that starting lineup now, right? You've got 2 lead strikers, so you've got your 2 up top for both teams. You've got Livy Smith, who is a young player for Birmingham, and you've got Lucy Quinn, who again is a young player, played for Tottenham, has now come to Birmingham. You've got Kim Little and Vivian Miedema. You've got Miedema, who's one of the first players to get to 50 goals in the WSL. And you've got Kim Little, who has just scored 50 goals for Arsenal. So you're telling me that just looking at those two head to head, that you can blame Arsenal's lack of players? I don't think you can.
Absolutely not. And also, when you just look at the starting lineup, there were only 2 names who aren't consistently in the starting lineup, right? And I actually want to call them out because I think that it contributed to the disjointed play that Arsenal had. unfortunately, Manum was subbed in at the very last minute. Leah Velte got injured in warm-ups, and Manum got subbed in right before the game, but she could not hold down that center midfield. And their midfield was just couldn't hold possession, and that was part of the disjointed nature. And then also we saw Boya Sorensen at center back. I mean, their center backs got split for that first goal, and that'll tell you everything.
To give Arsenal the only bit of leeway I'm going to give them is, if you look at that lineup, you've got players there that haven't really played together, especially in that midfield, for a long time. Like you said, you've got Jordan Nobbs, who hasn't been a starter for Arsenal in a very long time. Part of that due to injury, part of that the fact that they brought in other players. We've got to, as we've said pretty much in Manium, in the fact that she got thrown in at the very last minute because of an injury. You've got Jen Beattie, who is not their first choice centre-back at all. They are missing Williamson, and they haven't managed to close that gap. But at the same time, all of those are international players. All of those play for their country. All of those have been, in their own way, firing for Arsenal. How many times have we talked about Beth Mead and about how much she has improved and brought us on, and that's why she's got her England call-up and stuff like that. They quieted Mead down. They literally just stopped her in her tracks. You barely heard anything from her all game, which is so unusual.
All of the forwards, really, but specifically Mead. And just like you were talking about down the wing, they quieted the wings, and she was non-existent.
Yeah, so you couldn't say that Birmingham just got those tactics so right, and Arsenal, dare I say it, underestimate their opposition, considering the difference in league table positions?
I don't know really what it was, but you have to believe that that's part of it. I mean, even in the first 5 minutes, just watching the game, you could see that Arsenal were on their heels and Birmingham City were out to win the game. They were like, we are back and we're ready to go. And Arsenal was like, oh, this is a great way to ease in, maybe. All credit to Birmingham City. They played their hearts out. And so far, I really love, I'm a huge fan of what Darren Carter is doing with this team and how he's building their confidence. Because even though these are professional athletes, they're human beings, and you have to be able to see that losing however many games in a row that they just lost or drew, it's going to take a beating to your confidence level. So the fact that he's starting there, and you can just see it in their mentality, if this is the direction they're going, I think that they're going to be able to play themselves out of relegation.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the thing is, there was a lot of, I know from Birmingham fans, there was a lot of critique of Carter coming in because he hasn't managed high-level women's football. He managed West Brom, who are a few divisions below the WSL. But maybe that's what they needed. They didn't need this flash manager, which Scott Booth was, because he'd managed Glasgow City into Champions League and stuff like that. Birmingham have gone through decimation for the last 4 seasons with players coming and going in mass exodus. They needed someone that's going to basically help them remember basics, how to string passes together, how to put in good tackles. And I think having someone who's basically, it's grassroots football, coming in and reminding them of that, I think has sort of wedged their head on their shoulders.
Yeah, I totally agree. And not to make it sound, rudimentary either, but that's exactly what they need. And that's what they needed to be able to play the smart tactics that they played. Make no mistake, this game was dominated by Birmingham City. This in no way, shape, or form was, they just got the right tactics and Arsenal couldn't put a goal away. This was dominated by Birmingham City. And if they can continue to do this, then it does look bright. On the other hand, I don't think that the uproar that I've seen of Arsenal's in trouble, Miedema's going to leave, I don't think that we can apply that to this game. It's a fluke. In some ways, they will learn from it, hopefully, and move on, but I don't see this as anything other than it was off in a lot of ways, and they have a lot of things to learn. Move on. Can
we talk about Viv for a brief moment?
I absolutely think we need to talk about Viv because I think she needs an attitude adjustment, and I think that might be controversial, might be pissing people off. Let me phrase that differently. As a fan of Viv, the way she's approaching, the way it seems like her mentality is approaching each game, is not the Viv we've seen in past years. It's a different Viv.
Yeah, and not for the better. I know she's probably reading all of the people online that are giving her grief because she didn't manage to score in Champions League. She's not managed to score in the big games, as they call it. But there was a sort of arrogance, and not in a good way, in that game. And then it was sort of like, how dare you do this to us? And like we've said, that she mouthed off to the ref and got herself a yellow for the trouble, because instead of getting her head down and going, right, how do I fix it? Because to be honest, Birmingham went 1-0 up in 3 minutes. I thought, all right, that's a token goal. Arsenal will wake up and then we're going to be looking at a 5-6-0. And it just felt like Miedema was just sort of like, how dare they score against us? And that was it. And there was no like head down. It was just...
Yeah, that's it. There was no like head down, channel my competitiveness and frustration in the right way. One time she crossed the ball into the center of the box and it looked like it was going to be a goal, and Kim Little hit it, and Birmingham City had 2 center backs on the line, managed to defend it and get the ball out. And you saw Viv kind of throw her hands up in the air in what seemed to be I did everything right to set us up and we couldn't even put that away type of frustration. And I think that this sounds like we're just reading into things. And I'll say, we know we're just getting this from the way she's moving on the field and what she's doing, but it is a different mentality and you can see that from her. And I do wonder if part of it is her kind of knowing that she'll be off and away next year.
It wouldn't surprise me, if I'm honest. I think she's not committing to her future. I know a lot of Arsenal fans were worried about an article she did just before Christmas where she said if things don't change, then she will be looking to move on. And then there are rumours coming around that Real is looking at her and Barca's looking at her, though I don't think she'd go to Barca. But who knows?
All right, moving into Around the World, Around the World. I missed singing that. Australia, going to the land down under. We are so excited to be able to start covering this league. The league down under is back with a bang. 6 games in, and Sydney DC are flying with 16 points out of a possible 18 points. With a 4-0 win over Perth Glory, only cementing their position as frontrunners. However, Melbourne City are hot on their heels, only 4 points behind and a game in hand.
Absolutely. And we go back to our favourite league in Spain, in the fact the Spanish league returns, and surprise, surprise, Barcelona are back in top form. A 7-0 win over Granadilla Tenerife see the Catalonian side 11 points clear with a, wait for it, plus 89 goal difference.
It's always so wild to see that. Your Spanish accent has gotten so much better, by the way. I think you've been working over holiday break.
Maybe.
All right, over to international news. The Arnold Clark Cup has announced its inaugural lineup. Hosts England will take on Canada, Germany, and Spain. With opposition like that, we'll finally see what this new England squad is made of. And we'll see if Canada can defend their title. This is a great slew of teams, and I'm really excited for this.
Absolutely. And then across the pond, we go to the She Believes Cup, has announced its lineup finally after much conjecture. We've got the US taking on brand new contestants in New Zealand, the Czech Republic, and Iceland. Now, many have considered that a little drop in teams, dare we say. But I think it's still going to be good to see these newer teams give as good as they get.
Absolutely, and Iceland could be that dark horse, so we will be covering both of these tournaments.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football games, including women's football. Want to know why Miedema scores so many goals? Do you want to explore how City have turned it around this season? Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and sign up to learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for €10. That's €40 off the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
We're going to jump into something that Allie has already deemed a conspiracy theory. But I'm not trying to bring it up in a conspiracy theory sense. So bear with me, everybody. And Allie, bear with me. I think that it's important for us to talk because COVID protocols annoyed me last year. And I think that there is a lack of transparency this year that is just unneeded. So is there a need for more transparency over COVID cases that cause postponements? And does the postponement and the fact that there isn't transparency lead to an unfair advantage for teams?
I think the biggest problem we've got here is, for example, I will take my beloved West Ham because that's the one I know about. Our game against Man United got cancelled this week because we didn't have enough players. That was the announcement, and we don't, because we barely have enough squad as it is. And apparently, because London's a hotbed, we'd gone down to under the required threshold, which is you need to be able to field at least 13 players, and we couldn't. So that's why our game got cancelled. But that's all we were told. We just got told we couldn't field the required 13 players.
So what about a team like Chelsea, whose bench is full? I could look up how many players they have on the roster, but it's probably enough to field 2 teams. To say that Chelsea didn't have enough to field a team, very, very possible. But why not ask for that transparency and say, hey, I know you have 22 players rostered. Do you have more than 8 out with COVID? Yes or no. Simple yes or no. And then that's the information that's given over it. Maybe even the number of. Because to me, it does seem sketchy. I'm not going to lie. It seems sketchy. I obviously, I'm not trying to say that these teams are doing this, but I'm not understanding why there isn't more transparency. And I'm not understanding the lack of.
Who should there be transparency to? Should the fans get to know the ins and outs of?
No, to the teams, to the coaches. And this was kind of news to me that the other teams weren't even getting that kind of transparency. I was under the assumption that as a fan, we weren't getting the transparency, and that's normal and that's fine. But to know that the coach of a team who was going to play another team didn't have enough transparency into the team they were going to play against and why their game was postponed, that's a problem. And I think that that's something that the FA needs to address. It's frankly unprofessional. And I'm not sure, sorry to bring it back to this, but I'm not sure that a men's club would have stood for that.
You're probably right there, to be honest. We've definitely seen some postponements in the men's game, which has again led to, it does lead to conspiracy theories, because especially when it's the same club often. So, for example, Chelsea before Christmas had their game postponed against us, and then they did it again where they had their game postponed against Tottenham. And a lot of people are asking, is that just so that they can get themselves ready because of the humiliating defeat they had in the Champions League? And sort of prepare themselves like that. We've had a lot of people saying, why can't you bring in youth players? Well, the answer is we have different bubbles over in the UK for the different teams. So the youth teams are not bubbled in the same bubble as the main team. And that becomes a whole logistical nightmare.
Also, I will say the argument of bringing in like the B team or the development team to support, easy to be made in the EPL, cannot be made. The difference between like a Chelsea's development system and like a Leicester City's development system, it's simply not fair. And I absolutely agree we can't be making that argument across the board here. But I still come to the point of, why can't there be more transparency among the coaches? And how is the FA benefiting from the lack of?
The thing is, I think there's less transparency than there was last year. Then that could also be to do with the Buygate, which was a whole thing. I don't know if you remember last year where...
Oh, how could I forget Dubaigate?
And that led to a lot of cancellations, and we all knew who it was because we'd all seen the Instagram pictures. And I think the FA came under fire for not doing more to punish them. So maybe they're trying to keep it as under wraps as possible. Should it be under wraps to fellow coaches? I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't think they should name the players coaches or publicly or otherwise. But like you said, it should be, do you have 8 players or less with COVID?
Right. Which also leads us to a bigger question about the WSL, where squads vary in size so much. I mean, you look at Birmingham City's squad and they had 4 players on the bench, and that's really their squad. They have the smallest squad in the WSL. Should there, especially with COVID, be a minimum number on your squad so we can avoid these types of postponements?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the problem you've got is who's going to come play for Birmingham if they've got an offer from So it's like you can't make players play for your team. It doesn't work that way.
I would assume that there's enough talent in the world that somebody would want to go play for a WSL side. I can assume that. I think that's a fair assumption to make, right?
Maybe. But no, you are right. I do want to touch on the conspiracy thing just because we've been subject to it. So I want to ask questions because you said about the fact that Brighton brought in these new internationals that can now play in the new match against Arsenal. We got accused of it. I'll say that as a collective we in West Ham, in the fact that we postponed our game and then 2 days later we announced a Danish midfielder, and suddenly all the Man United fans were like, I see now why you cancelled it, because you wanted to strengthen your midfield. And it's like, mate, we've got like 6 players. Like, I don't know what you want from us. Like,
I actually, when we're getting into the conspiracy theory stuff, I don't think of it in terms of a team like Brighton. I think of it in terms of a team like Chelsea, where I almost think like you already have such an advantage. This is so unfair if you're also able to postpone because 4 of your key players are out, or because you've got a couple over on Australia and 4 have got COVID. I know you got more of a bench than that. So that's more what I see it as, if that's what's actually happening. I don't think that's what's happening, especially with Chelsea. Like, I although I've never met her, I trust Emma Hayes. She's just so great with soccer tactics, it makes me trust her. But absolutely, I mean, this is part of what happens when there's no transparency. If there was more transparency, nobody would be saying any of this. But because there isn't, it leads to questions because nobody can quite figure out why this is happening. And that's kind of it. If anybody out there is listening and knows a legit reason, aside, obviously beyond not naming names, of like a legit reason why the FA couldn't just tell the opposing side they've got 22 rostered, they've got 8 with COVID, that leaves them with 14, that's 3 subs, we can play. Or, hey, they've got 10 out, we can't go. I don't know where the lack of but because that's what leads to the conspiracy theories.
It does. I mean, the FA are releasing how many players who have tested with COVID on a weekly, monthly basis. They are releasing that. I don't know if there's more details given to clubs about that. I know that a very surprising fact came out recently that only 80% of WSL players are vaccinated or double vaccinated, and only 90% of staff, which may explain why there has been such an outbreak. So I don't know if they're not being transparent because it might out the players that haven't been vaccinated, and if that's going to become a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I think that the more this goes on and the longer this goes on, the more issues we're going to run into if there isn't transparency around it, because the more games get postponed, it's just going to lead to more and more issues, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because we ended up having such a shocker end of season. Like, the fact that we're still having to play games from last season this season. I remember friends of mine that don't follow the women's game going, why is the FA Cup so early this year? And I was like, it's not early, it's late.
Yeah, don't worry, it's 2021, but we're playing the 2020
exactly.
FA Cup.
So it was just like, and we ended up with such a backlog, and that is when you're going to get tired players, and that's when there's going to be more postponements because of injuries and stuff like that. So we do need to try and stop that. But I do think it's going to end up being a bit like last season. Birmingham had to forfeit a game against Tottenham because they didn't have the players, and I think it's going to end up being like that. And if it does end up like that, I'll be interested to see how many suddenly they've got enough players to fulfill the squad. That
Look who's a conspiracy theorist now.
I blame you.
Well, that is it for our first episode back, everybody. We are back. Catch us again next week. Check out our Patreon. We've got a lot going up on Patreon, as we always do now. So check it out. We're going to have News in 10 going up. That's Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. Hit us up with all of your questions, your comments, your thoughts. Tell us if you've got any New Year's resolutions, because that's what I want to know. Mine currently is I want to get blocked by Carly Lloyd on Twitter, and I will be making sure that happens this year.
You hear that, everybody? Help Allie get blocked by Carly Lloyd. I feel
like I'm missing out.
That's
being
it.
The prestigious fan club. But yeah, hit us up on our socials, and yeah, just have a great week. Here's to more great football.
Here's to more great football. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Bye.
Bye, guys.